Author, you traveled on the one of the longest trains in the world, the Iron Ore train, the Desert Piercer in Sahara, all the
Mhm.
way from the port city. I'm going to butcher the pronunciation, so I'm just not going to even bother pronouncing it. The town, the coastal town, and it's a 14-hour journey across the Sahara. And you rode it, and I believe you hitchhiked in it.
So the town, and you know what? I'm probably going to butcher it as well. So this is my British version of that name. I think, as I understand, it's called Nouadhibou.
Mhm,
It's a town that peers off a little tiny peninsula
mhm,
right in the top left corner of Mauritania,
mhm.
and the train goes right along the long, long straight line border with Western Sahara and lands in a tiny little town called Chum before zooming up to Zuarat, which is the name of the iron ore mine that everyone on the train seems to be going to. But I was jumping off two-thirds ish of the way along, and it was a very, very sweaty, dust-filled journey, I must say.
I want to understand what is a big deal regarding it because there's no adventure. I believe a lot of adventure tourists go with the train. I
You know,
just can't fathom what makes it so adventurous.
Mauritania has is one of the countries in Africa. Indeed, actually, I think one of the countries in the world with the lowest tourism. That's the first thing to say. I think the only country in Africa with lower tourism is a very tiny country, island nation. It's just escaped me. Comoros is the least touristic country in Africa. This is the second least touristic country in Africa. And for any viewers or anything or listeners, if you go onto Instagram, you can find Visit Mauritania. They've just decided to make a tourism page, and they've decided that they want tourists. But there's not really much. Respectfully, there's not a huge amount to see. I mean, for example, every single building in Mauritania, pretty much every building has been built from the 60s onwards. So there are a few desert towns, which are really, really old. They're sort of really old Saharan towns, thousands of years old. But the train is the only thing in Mauritania where you can say, right, this is the only place in the world where you can experience this, a train into the middle of nowhere. I should just say, by the way, before we go on about the longest train in the world situation, because that might sound a bit misleading. Because some people might be thinking, oh, I thought the Siberian train was the longest train in the world. And that's a fair point. The Siberian train is the longest track. I don't know, that's tens of thousands of kilometers. This is the longest actual connection of carriages, like actual train. So
It's
if you
about
sit
three
in the
kilometers long, right?
yeah, so it changes really because it depends how many carriages they really decide to attach. So there's usually one passenger cart at the back. But yeah, if you're sitting in the middle, you see 1.5 of kilometers worth of carriage going in front of you and 1.5 going behind you. It's pretty surreal, actually. Um, but yeah, the reason people go, I think, to Mauritania, I would say over 95% of people visiting Mauritania are visiting this train because it's extraordinary. It's extraordinary. I can attest it's an extraordinary experience, but the main thing is it's an experience you can't have anywhere else in the world. I think it's the same reason people visit the Siberian train.
Yes, sir. And how safe is it?
How safe is it? It is 100%. Well, I was about to say it's 100% safe. It is pretty safe, and bear in mind, I've only done it twice. I don't do it every day. There are people that do it, I'm sure, every week. In fact, I know there are people who do it every week because I met them. But insofar as my experience goes, um, I want to say it's 100% safe because I do want to encourage people to do it because it's really, really cool. But being 100% honest, I did get stolen from on the train. No violence. Generally speaking, my experience of Africa, just generally, is that, I've been stolen from more times than I can count in Africa. Of all the places in the world I've been, West Africa has been the place I've been stolen from most, but never violence. I've never actually seen any violence. See, a pretty peaceful place. And the same in Mauritania. We can go into that story later, but yeah, I don't think there's any threat to your life at all, and certainly not from the train. That's one thing I should say. It is a bit, jaggedy and sort of bumps up and down quite a lot, and you think there's a lot of sand on the tracks, but you're not going to die on the train, that's for sure. It's completely fine. I think, to be honest, I watched a lot of YouTube videos. I'm sure anyone who's heard of this train would have seen a YouTube video by there's a guy called Paul the Bankrupt who did it 5 6 years ago, who really popularized this train. There's a lot of YouTube videos and Instagram posts and blah blah blah. You really don't need all that equipment. People say, oh, you need all these goggles and blah, blah, blah. I mean, sure, honestly, as with everywhere in the world, everything you need, you could buy 5 minutes before. You just need a headscarf and some sunglasses. I really believe just generally with traveling, everything you could possibly need for experience, you could buy there, obviously. But yeah, totally safe for the train.
So what happened to you? You got stolen.
Dearie me. So this is a bit of a wild story, to be honest. I got on
And
this
that's why I'm
train.
asking about it.
Well, indeed, it's a good reason to ask. So when did I get on this train? It must have been something in the region of May. So in late May, I will say, I arrived in Nouadhibou, and yeah, I wanted to go on this train, and I was sort of knocking around looking for a long headscarf to wind around my head. And I meet in a cafe a Dutch fishing salesman kind of guy, who, to be honest, I won't name him by name just in case, but he is a super corrupt man. He works for the EU, and he's
The Dutch
responsible.
and being corrupt. Wow, what a surprise.
Well, yeah, honestly, I mean, he's absolutely terrible. I mean, he's a very, what's the word I should use? A very free market kind of guy, by which I mean he sort of was talking about how, you know, America, China, and the EU are all pulling Mauritania apart to try and fight for its resources. And he says it's his job to put the EU at the front of the queue by spending the most money on their fish. So he trawls the ocean, or his company trawls the ocean to dig for fish, which is terrible because it means you're killing the wildlife, and you kill the young fish and the eggs, and so it's not very sustainable.
I know something about trawling and sea war, because as a Tamil, we, even till this date, we have a war with Sri Lanka. Thousands of fishermen have been killed by the Sri Lankan Navy, and we do trawling, but the reason being, we niggas are broke as fuck, and we need sustenance. So we do what we have to do, and we get killed for it. And India doesn't seem to mind that because it's just Tamils. And Sri Lanka, given the history of Tamils and Sri Lankans, they have fun killing us and arresting us and seizing the boats.
I saw a I think it was a Vice documentary about this, about the fishing war between Sri Lanka and India.
It's not
Actually,
Vice, it's by Johnny Harris, Vox.
There we go, by Vox, Johnny Harris, very good. But I noticed that this is a really common thing all over the world. People can be very... I really actually think this is going to be one of the major 3 sources of conflict in the next 20, 30 years, will be fighting over fish. You can see that pretty clearly. Like, you know, your listeners might find it interesting to research the Cod War, not the Cold War, the Cod War between Iceland and the UK fighting over fishing. Brexit's largely about fishing. So all over the place, actually, fish is a very important commodity as we have more people to feed, in short.
Right. So back to the story.
So I meet this guy. We'll call him...
Dutchie.
Sorry?
We call him Dutchie.
We'll call him
Dutchie.
Dutchie. Exactly. So we meet Dutchie. And how do I see him? Well, to be honest, in Mauritania, I was there for a month and saw approximately 0 tourists. So I saw a white guy and I was like, what the hell? So I went over to go say hello to the guy. And yep, then I discovered it's this guy. And he gives me a little slip of paper with his phone number, and he says, come say hello when you come back and we can get a coffee or something. And I go, okay, that would be great. So he sends me, he actually offers to buy me a taxi, and he sends me to the train station. Train station is honestly a bit of a grand word for this. It's really just a sort of, I mean, it's not much of a station. It's like a sort of just a building where people are just sitting and buying biscuits and stuff. And eventually the train, I believe, was supposed to arrive at 2 in the afternoon, but it ended up arriving at sort of 5 in the afternoon because, you know, that's just kind of the way African train timetables and everything works there. It slowly pulls in, and it's just offloaded all of its iron to be shipped off to God knows where. And it arrives, and, you know, I think I'm with, I'll say somewhere in the region of 200 other people, and we all pile on. And I would say of these 200 people, 150-ish were young men going the full distance to Zouarat to go work on the mine. And then there were about 50 like me who were going to get off at Chum, 2/3 of the way, to go to the various towns in the center of the country, as this is just the most efficient way in. The main thing to say is you don't have to pay for anything. It's not illegal. You can get on the train. There's police to help old ladies get on the train should they need the help. Completely fine. If people understand that Mauritania doesn't have a huge amount of infrastructure, you really see that as you go on the train. And so this bit of infrastructure built by the French, they're very happy to use. And actually, it's very telling. If I'm sort of going on a slight aside before I go back to this story, if that's all right.
Yeah, sure.
But this Mauritania train is actually a really good insight into colonialism in Africa, actually. A lot of the public transportation, or indeed any infrastructure in Africa, is really just built for colonial powers to come from the coast, go into the country, extract resources, and then come back again. So you're not going to find Mauritania have a big circular network or linking various cities. No, it goes to a mine, port, back to Europe. So this is what they've got.
Steal what you can.
You know, exactly. So they're using what they've got. But it's the same story in Senegal and Guinea-Bissau, Guinea-Conakry, whatever. It's the same story all over Africa. So anyway, I get on this train and I find myself, I'm roughly halfway, I would say in the middle of the train, roughly. And, you know, my French is pretty good, but I was speaking, I just so happened to land in the carriage of all these Portuguese speaking guys. So there were two guys from Angola. There was one guy from Mozambique, two guys from Guinea-Bissau. And they all are speaking to each other in Portuguese Creole about literally God knows what. But they are sort of telling me in very, very broken French their names and things. And I go, okay, whatever, that's fine. So the train sets off and I'm obviously taking pictures and going, wow, this is incredible. But as soon as you pop your head above the carriage, you get absolutely whipped in the face by the dust and the sand. Whipped in the face. You can barely open your eyes. And I made the very silly mistake of not buying sunglasses because I'm a complete idiot. Don't ask me why. But I did have my headscarf. So I basically just covered my entire face with a headscarf so I could basically see nothing. And I had a tiny little slit so I could see out. And I brought on this mattress and blanket, which I had actually borrowed from, what do we call him again? Dutchie, which I borrowed from Dutchie. Very kind of him. So it was what can only be described as an asbestos mattress, just made of the most just terrible material and like a sort of equally plasticky asbestos, probably going to give me cancer blanket. But you know, you make do. Honestly, you make do. You're in Mauritania. And off we went. And I made a little bit of conversation, but as you can imagine, it's very loud. The tracks themselves are very loud. And as the sun began to set, I laid out my mattress and I laid out my blanket. Just to give an image, there's no coal in the train at this point. We're actually inside the carriage. So you are shielded from the rain and from the dust or whatever. You're shielded from stuff. And I fall asleep, and that's fine. All the guys, as soon as I unfurl my mattress, all of the Portuguese-speaking guys are like, "Ooh, mattress!" And they all come over to my side of the carriage, and they're playing dice or something, and we share a little bar of chocolate, and it's fine. I go to sleep. Well, and I'll say this is the worst night's sleep of my life. Terrible night's sleep. As you can imagine, the train's sort of crashing up and down every 5 seconds. And about 4-ish a.m., pitch black, I get shaken awake, and he goes, "American." I don't know why. One of them thought I was American, but he goes, "American." And I go, "Huh?" And he says, "Psst." And the train crawls to 1 mile an hour, and you go to, there's 2-3 minutes at Chum, the place that I need to get off, from which you can there's a sort of fleet of taxis waiting to take you to the various towns, Attar, Chinguetti, some of these more historic towns. And I was like, oh Christ, I've got to go. So I take my asbestos mattress, hurl it off, take my plastic blanket, hurl it off, and I zip up my backpack and jump off, and I start sort of running over to one of the taxis. I go to the front pouch of my backpack to get my stuff. Basically, all the important stuff is in there. And I open it, and it's empty. And I think, oh, am I allowed to swear?
You can.
I thought, good fuck. Jesus Christ, what am I? I'll tell you what I saw. I saw a lack of wallet. I saw a lack of phone, most concerningly, honestly, for me, and a lack of headphones. I mean, that's just the way it goes. Thank goodness, mashallah, as they would have said, that my passport was in a separate compartment. So I was very grateful for that. But I was really panicking at this point. So I explained to the taxi driver at 4 a.m. in pitch black, I got my torch out, put it on my head, and I explained to the guy that I didn't have any cash. He said, well, that's not my problem. So he points me to the gendarmerie, which is basically like a military police. And at 4 a.m., I rap on the door and I go, hello. And some guy sort of wakes up. He's obviously been asleep for hours, and he goes, basically, what the hell do you want? And I tried to explain to him, I actually did have my wallet. There was just nothing in it. I opened my wallet and I go, so I tried to explain the problem in French, and lo and behold, this guy speaks no French. So I had a genius plan. I took out my spare iPhone, which I bring for travels. I charge it with my power bank, wait 10 minutes.
And where did you have your iPhone hidden? Don't say up your ass.
It's up my ass. No. I tell you what, this is something I discovered when I went to Tajik. I got mugged in Tajikistan, and again, I managed to save a few key items because all of the stuff that I really, really need to keep safe, I keep in. Basically, I have a big pair of socks, which I actually never use. I just use it to store stuff, and then I put it. If I've got my backpack, at the very underside of my backpack, there's a zip you can undo, and there's a sort of rain cover for the thing. And so I shove a pair of socks in there, and there was various visa documents and passports and my spare iPhone I keep in this sock. So it's a bit of a crazy system, but there we go. I take out my iPhone, but not up my arse. That sounds like a crazy system. What's that from? That film where the journalists go to North Korea? That's what it reminds me of, The Interview.
Yeah.
Oh God. Anyway, so no, I take out this spare iPhone 7, charge it, wait for the bloody thing to turn on, and then type into English, put it into Arabic. I have a bunch of translation files. All this iPhone has on it is screenshots of my passport, a bit of music, and translation files. So I show him some translation files, and he goes, and he can't read and write Arabic. And I'm like, oh my God, this guy can't read and write, can't speak French. How the hell am I supposed to explain my goddamn problem to the police? So he signals to me that he's going to call his boss, and I go, yes, please. In fact, I remember what I said. I said, yallah. I don't speak Arabic, but I know yallah means let's go. So, which was probably a bit impatient and rude of me. So his boss comes in. It's still very early. He comes in his bubu, which is like their traditional sort of robe. And you've got to remember, guys, it's like 40 degrees. It's so swelteringly hot. It's so hot. I'm English as well. I mean, I'm just not built for this kind of conditions. I'm built for sort of chill days in vaguely cloudy temperatures where I can sort of complain about the weather even though it's only about 12 degrees. 40 degrees, I'm sweating to death. So this guy comes and he speaks French, thank goodness, and I explain my problem to him and he goes, this could never happen in Mauritania, outrageous, And I go, what in a... You know, that's not the first time I've heard that response. I've been stolen from on several occasions. And it's always, they go, this could never happen in my country. And I want to say how bloody unhelpful a response that is. So then he says, give me some details. So I tell him that it's some Portuguese speaking guys, and he goes, foreigners. Of course, the foreigners. I think, oh my God, if only we needed a pinch of xenophobia in the situation to help everything along. So he starts to write his police report, and I've been to enough corrupt, poor infrastructure countries, if I can honestly be so rude, to say that writing a police report means nothing's going to happen. So I asked to borrow his phone, his sort of drug-dealing Nokia brick phone type thing, so I can call. Thank goodness, he'd written out on a piece of paper earlier that morning. What do we call him again? Dutchie. I can call Dutchie. So I call Dutchie and I go, hello, Dutchie. And he sort of answers me in his very Dutch voice. He goes, hello. And I say, I'm in a bit of a bother. I've been stolen from. He goes, that's terrible. It never happens in this country. And I go, oh my gosh, I've already been through this. But he says, all right, when you come back, you stay with me. We'll find someone to sort you out. No worries. He was really chill about it. To be fair, he's still in that country as well, but he was nice to me. So, I can only complain so much. But he says that I should, and I think I've remembered this name right, but I actually might need to follow up and just check this is the right name. But he said that I should tell them, the police people I'm with, that I'm going to call General Muscaro to sort out the situation. In fact, he says, Dutchie, I'm going to call General Muscaro on your behalf, Arthur, and hopefully that will sort it out. So I go, okay. I find out the next day that this guy is basically the head of the internal police, by which I mean secret police, and he's the kind of the sharp edge of the Mauritanian state. So I mention that, and they all go, oh, shit, fuck. So they all really hop to, and they're all making all sorts of phone calls, and they tell me that they're going to search everyone getting off the train. And I think, oh my God, search everyone getting off the train. I saw how many people got on that train. I think that is a massive operation. So what do? They search everyone getting off the train. And lo and behold, they find my iPhone. I've actually got it repaired today, but this, you have to just trust me, this was one beat up phone. I mean, the only thing I didn't bother getting replaced, I don't know if you can see that, the back is cracked. But, you know, this was some beat up phone when I got it back. Some awful things had happened to that phone. I barely could make a phone call on it. Headphones ripped. And suspiciously, I asked after my money. And, you know, what can I say? It didn't turn up. I'm sure you might be sharing my suspicions that they've probably just walked off with it. But I was very grateful to get my stuff back. So they had gone to, well, they had presumably called a colleague to search someone off the train. And then they'd driven from Zouarat, the end of the line, to Chum, where I was waiting 2/3 of the way along to give me my stuff. And I was like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. You know, it actually occurred to me, it's actually just occurring to me now, they probably did some awful things to whoever they caught it from. Actually, I don't even want to think about that. That's a pretty dark thought, actually.
You never know, dude. You never know. If it's usually like the threatening tactics sometimes do work. Because usually in Africa, especially in West Africa or East Africa, where you have the highest levels of poverty, the cops don't do jack shit to get the stolen stuff back. So if the cops are doing stuff, the robbers would have understood that they stole from someone they shouldn't have.
No, you're 100% right. I actually don't think this is an African thing. I just think this is true with a lot of countries. Like I've spent a long period of my life in the Russian-speaking part of the world, Central Asia, and if you're not bribing the police, they're just, you know, they're not doing anything for you. And then you suddenly give them in West Africa they call it a petit cadeau, a little gift. You give them a little gift, and like, oh, my friend, and you know, all of a sudden you're staying at their cousin's house or whatever. Yeah, it's just.
So thank you for the story, dude. And this is what I wanted to ask to you and let you share about the incredible journey that you had on the longest train in the world, the Desert Piercer. So thank you for your session, and hopefully we'll have many more sessions in the future. Thank you so much.
Absolutely, I look forward to it. Thanks for your time.
Cheers, man.
Take care.